Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never practice nunchucks in a crowded room. Never eat chole before a road trip. Always take your shirt off before you iron it. Don't take a call near a swimming pool. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Remember that occasional series we do called First Person Second Draft, which is where I go back to something I might have covered, experienced, interacted with as a journalist or as an editor in the past, and which might have been brought into relevance by a new development. That gives us an opportunity to look back at what happened and where we've come. Also, it gives me an opportunity for some storytelling. So today we've seen the unfortunate passing away of General Sundararajan Padmanabhan, who was the 19th Chief of Indian Army between the year 2000 and 2002, 1st October 2000 to 31st December 2002. He had a relatively short tenure by the standards of that era. These days, army commanders tend to have shorter tenures, but by the standards of that era, he had a relatively short tenure as Northern Army Commander, 1st September 1996 to 31st December 1998. In fact, there is a lot of discussion in academic circles, in military academic circles, that if he had a longer tenure and if he had been the Northern Army Commander when Kargil took place, maybe the history might have been different, because he was a very committed, very focused officer with a lot of experience in Kashmir. And some of the others who came in after that, they ended up in some kind of a shade because many questions were raised about them. That said, it was that tenure as Army Commander, which also played a role, say, in my working life in some ways, and that's the story I will tell you as we go along. And it was a good turn that he did to our team where I used to work then at the Indian Express. I will tell you that story as we go along. However, just to tell you that from Udhampur, Northern Command, he then went over 31st December 1998. He went away to Southern Command and then became the Army Chief on 1st October 2000 and retired on 31st December 2002 on the due date. And that again was a tenure where he saw history being made, because his tenure almost fully coincided with Op Parakram, because Op Parakram started in mid-December 2001. That was after the terrorist attack, Jaish-e-Mohammed attack on Parliament, after which Vajpayee government decided to pile up the forces on Pakistan's borders and threaten a war of anger. He was the Chief of Army Staff then, and he carried out that mobilization. Now, it was in that mobilization that is not something that many people of a younger generation might remember. Maybe many of my generation have also forgotten, because that Op Parakram finally ended sort of uneventfully, because the two sides came very close to war, once in January, the second time between May, June. But the big powers got involved and they got Pakistan to say certain things and do certain things, and war was avoided. And that's the reason the history of that warlike situation of Parakram, that's the closest India and Pakistan came to war. Even during Kargil, India and Pakistan did not come close to a full-fledged war like that, because even then a full-fledged mobilization had not been carried out. But under his watch, a full-fledged mobilization had been carried out. It was in that process that on 11th of January 2002, that is in less than a month after the mobilization started, in fact almost exactly 3 weeks after mobilization started, that government of India, Vajpayee government, fielded him to face the media to make a couple of statements, in fact one rounded statement, and also answer some questions from the media. And that was quite a remarkable news-making event, because what had happened was that Government of India had got the sense, and that sense came obviously from Western interlocutors I'm sure the Americans, that General Musharraf was going to make a statement in a day or two, or maybe even the next day, which would be conciliatory. Now that statement did turn out to be conciliatory when on 12th of January 2002, General Musharraf promised to wind down his terror network, and he said that any soil, any land, any piece of land controlled by Pakistan, either part of Pakistan or controlled by Pakistan, which means Pakistan occupied Kashmir, shall ever be allowed to be used for terrorist activity against India. He also said that I have seen the list of wanted men that India has given us, those that are our citizens, Pakistani citizens. We will not, there's no question of handing them over to India, but those that are not Pakistani citizens, that are probably Indian citizens, it's not as if we've given them an asylum. So if Government of India gives us details about them and you find that they are indulging in terrorist activity, we will hand them over to India. So that almost was like a truce call for him. It didn't happen. That's a different matter. In my view, Vajpayee government should have declared victory then, instead of then letting this situation drag on. And this situation dragged on for a very long time until both armies got tired of being piled up on the borders, and there were mine accidents and other injuries and deaths on both sides. Nevertheless, because it was known that Musharraf will make some statement in a day or two, on 11th of January, Government of India fielded General Padmanabhan, and he made a very authoritative statement. In fact, so authoritative that a lot of people, including in the foreign press in Delhi, they were taken aback, because they were not used to seeing an Indian general talk like that. Because remember, in India, a general does not even have the authority or power to start a war, end a war. That is the political authority, politically elected government that decides that. The generals, the commander's power is then to design the war, in the sense that he then prepares his armed forces for the war, he makes the plans, he sets the tactical objectives, strategic objectives come from the government. So in India, we are not used to generals talking upfront on a larger plane, which is what he did at that point. So I was trying to search for links, or some links to that video. We haven't yet found it. If we find it, we'll share it with you. Otherwise, if any of you can find it, please send it to us. We'll be grateful. And if it's a public source like PIB, then we'll be able to also publish it. However, he said in that press conference, we know what to do. Our plans are well laid out. And then he said, yes, it's true that everything that happens between India and Pakistan is in the glare of world media. But the challenge lies in retaining an element of surprise despite this, right? He was a forthright man. Even when he was army commander, before corps commander, he had irritated the state government, the local political government, by making many statements and by acting in a particular way, which was more military-like, not political, military-like. He had also said something which the Indian political leaderships don't like to hear, and sometimes the public opinion also doesn't like to hear. He was of the view that militancy can be contained. So you have to be prepared to live with a contained militancy. Militancy cannot be eliminated. That was his view. He, however, made some more very important statements in that Meet the Press or that statement on behalf of Government of India in a very warlike situation. At that point, if you lived through it, you would remember it looked like a war will break out, a full-fledged war will break out anytime. Mr. Vajpayee was also talking of Aar Paar Ki Ladai and stuff like that. And he said, I know where these training centers are. I know where these camps are. I can take them out. I can take action. And he was asked a question about Pakistanis having nuclear weapons. Just the previous year, a couple of years back, in 1998, India and Pakistan had both become stated nuclear weapons powers. And he said, should Pakistan use the nuclear option, its existence will be in doubt. Right now, this was an Indian Army chief. He retired on the due date, right, which is 31st December of that year. A new chief took over from him, in this case General N.C. Vij. As always happens in India, one general goes, one chief goes, the other chief takes over. However, in Pakistan, Musharraf carried on as you would expect, and on 30th of December, the day of General Padmanabhan's appointment, I don't know if Musharraf timed it like that, but he made statements. He made a statement to the press saying that the reason war had been avoided through the year is because he had told every interlocutor who came to him from the Western world mostly, but by that time some of the Arabs were also getting involved to try and prevent war in the subcontinent, that anybody who came to me, I told them that if India takes even one step across the border, they should expect not just a conventional response, they should expect a nuclear response. He didn't say nuclear, but when he says they should expect not just a conventional response, you know what it means. So it is widely believed that he, in a way, was responding to what General Padmanabhan might have said. When General Padmanabhan made that statement, however, the political leadership was a little bit taken aback. In fact, there were some murmurs politically that maybe he had spoken too much, or maybe he had commented on the nuclear option, which he should not have done. But the fact is that in the security establishment, including the security bureaucracy, many people were happy that we finally have an Indian chief speaking like a chief should speak, particularly in a warlike situation. Now that said, it's my time now to tell you the story that I said I will tell you, in which he plays a stellar role. And for that, I have to take you back to 7th October 1997. That is the eve of the Air Force Day. This is the story of a most unusual favor and act of kindness that a wonderful institution like the Indian Air Force did to us and my colleagues. Also, in that, the Indian Army played a stellar role. There were lives of two very young women on the line that day. Thanks to the IAF, with some extraordinary help from the Army as well. General Padmanabhan was then the Northern Army Commander, remember. So thanks to the IAF and some extraordinary help from the Army as well, we were able to save one life. We were all too late with the other. Fate gave her and us no chance. This story keeps coming back to me every now and then. It came back to me again today with the news of General Padmanabhan's passing. Of the two young women I'm talking about, the one we lost, she was a young editing desk hand, Priya Chandrasekhar, who we lost on 7th of October 1997. She was in a Maruti van that rolled down the steep mountain road near Patni Top, the highest point on the highway between Jammu and Kashmir. We at the Indian Express then had just set up the Jammu and Kashmir edition of our paper. We thought it was a fitting tribute on the 50th anniversary of independence. The edition was being produced by the Delhi-based editorial staff that took turns for the onerous Jammu duty. Sometimes somebody from Chandigarh would also go and join in. Priya was among those three that week. There were two from Delhi there and one from Chandigarh. That very early morning, the three decided to take the Maruti van kept for the team's use to go watch the sunrise from Patni Top. Young people, what do? We work till late night. Let's go and watch the sunrise at Patni Top. The man at the wheel probably fell asleep and lost control on the way back. The van rolled down and some villagers who luckily saw it rushed to help. Priya, unfortunately, did not make it, but the other two did. One, the only male among the three, had a fractured limb. The other young woman looked in much worse shape. The villagers had the compassion and good sense to rush them all to the military hospital at Northern Command headquarters at Udhampur. Priya, sadly, was declared dead. The treatment of fractured limb was started and the other woman was diagnosed with a fractured spine in a very crucial place where negligence or delay or mishandling could be crippling or even life-threatening. When the military hospital reached us, we were told they did not have the wherewithal to deal with the spinal injury and she had to be evacuated. Remember, I'm taking you back 27 years. I'm sure facilities are much, much better now. She was then in too precarious a position to be evacuated by road or rail. Udhampur did not have a civil airfield. All it had was a tiny defense military airstrip for emergencies in VIP use, and it did not operate at night. By this time, it was already getting dark, particularly in the mountains. Distraught is a mild word to describe our state of mind. Everybody said just one thing, that ADR, I'm just using the initials of the person with a spinal injury, that ADR must live. We must not lose, we cannot lose a second life. We reached the IF headquarters at operational levels, but we were told any intervention was impossible at this stage. In any case, everything needed top-level clearance. The IF needed very high-level ministerial clearance, in fact, to evacuate civilians. And then Udhampur did not even have adequate night landing facilities, and in any case, the IF had no aircraft personnel or time to spare. The next morning was Air Force Day and everybody was preparing for parades and flypasts. At this point, we decided to pull rank in desperation. I called then IF Chief, Air Chief Marshal S.K. Sareen, thank you very much, sir. I called him directly and asked how could the IAF not save a life that we couldn't afford to lose. He asked for a little time to think. He called back within 10 minutes. He said, and I hope he forgives me for breaking this confidence after such a long time. He called me and he said he will get an AIM-32 to fly from Chandigarh on a night flying training sortie. Arrange for Udhampur also to receive it at night, to receive the aircraft at night, never mind the lights, and take off for Delhi. We could take her to hospital then in Delhi, to a private hospital. The IAF plane reached Udhampur within an hour and a half, because from Chandigarh it isn't that much of a flying time. But there was another heartbreak. Its pilot sent word that since the patient had serious spinal injury, they couldn't bring her on board unless, as per rules, there were at least 2 trained paramedical personnel accompanying her. They were not going to break that rule, and in any case, there was risk to her life. So who was going to be responsible? The IAF had no medical personnel at Udhampur. In fact, the IAF hardly had any personnel in Udhampur then. But the army had plenty, except you again needed someone really high up to bend some rules. Enter General Sundararajan Padmanabhan. The Northern Army commander then was General Padmanabhan, who later became Chief of Army Staff. His phone was rung, he came on the line, and thinking on our panicked feet, we threw the heaviest possible mercy plea at him, even reminding him that his own daughter, at just about the same age as the young people working for us then, involved in this accident, she had worked with us as a trainee at the place of my previous employment at India Today, and how he, then Director General of Military Intelligence, used to be concerned for her safety. Frankly, it didn't need that much persuasion. He figured out a solution. He said he will send 2 paramedics sort of informally to Delhi. So we should organize for somebody to find them some blankets and some bedding and some place to sleep at Palam, because he could not organize it formally at such short notice in any case. Sure enough, a little after midnight, an AN-32 arrived in the technical area of Palam. We cried as we received 1 coffin, but the survivor was rushed to Apollo Hospital in its ambulance. Its chief orthopedic surgeon had already been summoned from home. The surgeon was brilliant and our patient strong. She was fine soon enough and was the most spirited dancer at the young people's parties. All of us owe that one life to the IAF and the army, and in this case also specifically, personally, Air Chief Marshal S.K. Sareen and then Lieutenant General Sundararajan Padmanabhan, the 2 topmost officers who thought nothing of innovating, if not breaking the rules, going way beyond the call of duty. As we drove out of the airbase that night, we could see preparations being made for the morning celebrations and parade. Priya was among the 3 young colleagues we lost while on the job during my long innings at the Indian Express. The other 2 were reporters, Sanjeev Sinha, who was in the small aircraft with Madhav Scindia on 1st October 2001 that crashed, and Vijay Pratap Singh, who was caught in a bomb thrown at a BSP minister, Nand Gopal Gupta, in Allahabad on 22nd July 2010. The paper instituted internal scholarships and awards in their names to commemorate their memory. There is no greater wrench than the loss of a colleague on the job, and that too such young ones. Our loss could have easily been 4 instead of 3, but for the pilots, crew, and the chief of the IAF, Air Chief Marshal S.K. Serene, and then Northern Army Commander General Sundararajan Padmanabhan on that longest night for us before the Air Force Day. Our lifelong gratitude is also that of the family of our young colleague, our ode to Air Chief Marshal Serene and General Padmanabhan forever. And as he passes on, this is also my grateful parting tribute to him.